Pues buenos días.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of you who are following us online through our YouTube channel. Welcome to this third day of the doctoral seminar program, Charles V European Award, European Disability Forum, United in Diversity, the Impact of the European Union on the Lives of People with Disabilities. We have reached the equinox of the seminar. We have one morning left. It's probably a little lighter than the previous mornings, but I'm sure it will be just as interesting. So, in order to depart this ninth panel, we have Professor Eric BUSSIÈRE with us. He is emeritus professor at the Sorbonne University. He is a holder of the Jean Monnet Chair in the History of European Integration. He was the director of the UMR series 2012-2016, University Paris 1 Sorbonne CNRS, and of the LabX EHNE 2012-2018. He is a member of several academic boards, including those of the Association pour l'Histoire BNP Paribas, the Comité pour l'Histoire économique et financière de France, and the Institut Georges Pompidou. And he is also a member of Robert Triffin International, corresponding member of the Portuguese Academy of History, and a member of the Scientific Council of the European and Ibero-American Academy of Yuste. He also serves as co-director of several scholarly series published by Peter Lang. He's the director of the journal Histoire, Économie et Société. His work focuses on the history of international relations, banking, and European integration. In recent years, he has co-directed the history program of the European Commission, 3 volumes. And he is co-author of works on the European policies of François Xavier Ortoli and José Manuel Barroso. Most recently, he co-authored with Laure Quenuel-Cor, BNP Paribas, the creation of a banking giant. He also published individually the work The Europe of Jacques Delors, Gestation et mise en œuvre d'un projet, Sorbonne University Presses. For us, it is a great honor to have him here. I always say that he's one of the founding fathers of this project, of this doctoral seminar, because many years ago we met on the occasion of the European Award, and in connection with the Charles V Award, we started this grants program that translated into this series of seminars. The aim was to bring Europe to the youth, to those who are researching, and to be able to contribute by working with the youth and contribute to the project of European integration. It's a great honor to have you here. You have the floor.
So thank you very much. It's a pleasure for me to introduce Rosa Maria CAñAVERAS Perea. The paper she will present deals with a central point: how can we promote inclusion by employment? It's really central. If people with disabilities can find an employ and a stable one, I think the most part of the problem is solved. So it's very important. Second, to find a job, you can ask for states, public establishment, but the best way is to engage in a profession in the private sector. The paper she gave us is upon the role of major enterprise in Europe, especially in Spain today. And I think why major enterprise, she will explain, and we will have a lot of opportunity to discuss and precise the subject. But I think one of the most important acts of his paper is a link between economic performance and social performance. We are not surprised to learn, if we look at her biography, she has a double degree in economic and law, but also a master in finance and tax consulting, and especially in sustainability reporting. And the social reporting is very important, and she will explain how the social reporting developed these last years and what we can expect from this development. Thank you.
De las diapositivas. No está. Muchas gracias. Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. It is a great pleasure to be here, and it is really exciting to be the speaker before last after hearing 8 brilliant researchers. I want to start by thanking the Yuste Foundation for launching this seminar. It is very important because it brings us together and it brings us out of our offices where we are working and studying, and it brings us together around a common topic that we address from different viewpoints. So it brings us out of our research and it helps us get to know other researchers, and this is very relevant. Thank you so much for this organization, and thanks to everyone who is translating, the people who can't be seen, and the team that is helping us be seen online, and the jury who read our curriculums and our papers so carefully. Please, Professor Eric, for your wonderful introduction. I will talk about my colleagues later on. I will talk about disability and sustainability reports. And you're probably wondering what an accountant is doing here, and I will tell you why there is an accountant here present in this forum. My name is Rosa CAÑAVERAS. I was very nicely introduced, but in order to help you understand why I'm here, I want to make some comments about my professional CV. I did this double training in economy and law.
Muy transversal y que además es una formación que se complementa.
This gives me a cross-cutting perspective. I didn't bring my whole CV because it was not the purpose, but I want to say that my curriculum is composed by people that is not just Rosa CAñAVERAS Perea. There are many people that work with me that I learn from, and I am part of a research group that I learn from every day, and I hope to keep learning. I fell in love with accounting. I also fell in love with law and economy, but I fell in love with accounting because here we have teachers here. I had a wonderful teacher who made me fall in love with accounting. The basis that we have in the accounting that we learn in university is finance accounting. I did a master's in financial accounting, but what I was told in my first day in my university is that sometimes there's a milestone, a legal milestone or some other milestones that give a change to your thesis or your postgraduate training. In 2022, there was a regulation that appeared. And that change is what impacted my training. I moved to another university, the University of Burgos, to get training in the other field, in sustainability, information, and assurance. Professor Ángel Tejade and Pilar Sanchez, my thesis directors, taught me a very important lesson that I think I share with you, and that's that we never stop learning. And since I am also a teacher, I want to say that in order to teach, you have to keep learning, and this is something that that's something that I want to share with you. Professor Ascension is the one who ventured into starting a second postgraduate with me. This is from a professional perspective, but I have a personal interest. I am a person with a disability, and I have two brothers that are also people with disability. And that's why I want to put my science, accounting, to the service of people with disabilities. Accountants can be dreamers, and I dream with a world without barriers. Unfortunately, I think barriers will always be here. And you have said this many times here, and I think it's absolutely true. We need to bridge gaps, because if we can bridge gaps over obstacles, we will have a better world. I want to answer a question. What does accounting have to do with disability? Something that inspires my thesis is that I am standing on the shoulders of giants. We are going to read the prior research. My thesis is not about disability, it's about labor accidents. So I have this personal interest. Many accidents happen at work. So I am going to share the results that I have so far and the conclusions, the outcomes that I am expecting. I want to thank the 9 people that I have shared this seminar with. I have learned many lessons from them. I don't know if you will learn something from me today, but I take many lessons from both parts of the table. I have been writing down some quotes that I have been gathering. Fray Vidal started saying that people come first, and we're going to see how all regulations that my study put people at the center too. And I will keep dignity and value at the center. Pablo Hurtado talked about an encounter of meetings. Cristina talked about the importance of participation, and I love that sentence. Nothing about us without us. Raquel said that ink can put up with anything, but we need to put things into practice. Brigitte talked about the concept of attitude, and Ismael made perfect reference to accounting, a decision that is measurable and auditable. Juan Manuel made reference to giving more value to the effort than to the result. If we focus on reporting, that summarizes my presentation. Paola said that Pedro Pablo said that as I grow up, we put last names to everything, and I'm going to talk about last names. Sergio wrapped up saying that the importance of facts is there, and we move to words to action. I'm the 9th one, so the 10th panelist is not present here in my collection of quotes, unfortunately. What I want to mention is that the European Union started with a wave of regulations, and sometimes we have the feeling that they're not connected, but we're all talking about the same thing. The Green European Pact started in 2019. It's very ambitious, and it talks about achieving a union that is climately neutral and sustainable. You may think that we're talking about sustainability, but there's an important element here. under the principle of a just transition. I go to the European strategy that we have been talking about throughout the seminar, it talks about supporting the green and digital transition and a healthy Europe, thus contributing to a sustainable Europe, resilient Europe. Resiliency is often implemented or used when we talk about disability. And when we talk about justice in this framework, we are talking about promoting the access to quality jobs that are sustainable. Pedro Pablo was talking about last names. Here, the last name is sustainable. We have to look back in time. That definition that is present in public law include the term decent work. In many conventions, we have heard that businesses are a key agent for the achievement of this objective of achieving decent jobs. So here is when accountants come into place. When I talk to my students about what accountancy is, I say, well, you speak Spanish, some other people speak German, some other people speak French. Those are the languages that people communicate with. When a legal entity needs to speak, when a business wants to report information, they use accounting, sorry. My teachers told me about the importance of language. And what is language for? For making decisions. We need that information for making decisions. So that's why we need accounting. This information is fundamental for making decisions. I always say that I'm an accountant with principles because non-financial or sustainability accounting are based on the principle or faithful image. Humbly, I can't be exhaustive on all the conventions, but I brought some excerpts from public international law to say that we have to look back because the term sustainable jobs, sustainable work, is based on all these conventions. The report of the Director General of the ILO at the 1999 meeting talked about decent employment, that it involves access to employment, social protection, fundamental rights, and it has to take into consideration social dialogue. If we take a look at European sustainability norms, all of this is included. Why? Because sustainability reports, when it comes to labor, needs to include all these ideas of decent work. The United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, on Article 27, talks about work and employment, and in the definition, it mentions these terms, decency. And if we take a look at the World Report on Disability of the World Health Organization, here, for the first time, it doesn't only talk about health. People with disabilities are affected by the environment, and that is very important when it comes to corporate reporting. SDGs are a very ambitious agenda. The fact that the world has considered this agenda is an achievement. I don't know if we will be able to do everything by 2030, but the fact that we have these objectives is important. I will talk about SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. One of the goals is full employment and decent work by 2030. The goal is to achieve full and productive employment and decent work for all women and men, including young people and persons with disabilities. In this seminar, we have seen that how this is connected to other SDGs like quality education, a decrease of inequalities, and of course SDG 17, that is the Alliance to Achieve All Goals. The European Union has mentioned these aspects very often. It's not only that this European strategy has addressed it, because the Amsterdam Treaty and other documents of the European Union have previously addressed the rights of people with disabilities.
actual, que es la estrategia sobre los derechos de las personas de 2021-2030.
But let us focus on the 2021-2030 strategy, the European strategy on the rights of persons with disabilities. That's there, and it's the most recent case, but we also have the European Disability and Parking Card, European Accessibility Act, and in Spain, of course, I need to mention the European Constitution. There are 4 perfect articles that define perfectly what decent, sustainable work is. We have Article 14 on equality, Article 15 on the right to life, Article 35, duty to work and right to work, and Article 45, most of us have talked about it, persons with disability. All of this is based on previous conventions. And then we have the general law on the rights of persons with disabilities and their social inclusion that is based on all these articles of the Constitution that are fundamental in my perspective. So, what does accounting have to do with all of this? As I was saying, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm not the first person who's going to talk about social and environmental accounting. My thesis director wrote a thesis on 1997 in the University of Burgos. Carlos Garriga already mentioned this concept and other teachers. But social environmental accounting is aimed at making it clear that as a business we have an impact on society and the environment. And this involves risks and opportunities in our profit and losses. But accounting aims at raising awareness and disseminating knowledge and reaching those places that are hard. With our calculations and our elections, we try to give visibility to specific aspects that we would seem impossible to speak about some years ago. What is the evolution of sustainability reporting in Spain? We have to talk about the impact and the reports that are non-financial, and the European Union has tried to advance towards this type of sustainability reporting. Sometimes it had to do with marketing. However, this has been done for very long. We can talk about 2002 and 2004 resolutions of the ICAC, the Institute of Accounting and Auditing in Spain. There was, in 2011, a Sustainable Economy Act was passed. Because of the economic situation, it wasn't that efficient, but we reached 2014. That's when the European Union wrote a directive, the NFRD, and there it is said that annual accounts are very important, but there are other things that also need to be mentioned because of that impact that accounting has on other stakeholders.
So the Spanish lawmakers don't respond for 4 years until 2018 and December the 28th. But the underlying question, and there are many jurists in this room, is why not a directive in 2022? Because it hasn't been standardized, it hasn't been sufficiently disseminated. This is what the European Union expected from the 2014 directive, and within the European Pact, that directive was necessary. I think that timeline needs a question mark, because in 2025 there is the Omnibus Directive, given the political situation that has paralyzed this rush of this wave of legislation or this rush for legislation. And we have to focus on the idea that we have a common nexus, we have the due diligence directive, born in 2024 still paralyzed, and financial directives, which still has something to do with the CSRD. But we don't know. This is what we are doing with this information. An important part of the CSRD is that they changed the name. It's non-financial. It's like, if you say non-financial, it's like you have financial information on the one side and then non-financial on the other side. But here it's financial and sustainable. And the double materiality is important. Risk and opportunity of stakeholders for me, climate change, society, and also my impact. In my dissertation, when I talk about the labor accidents, labor risks, I realize the impact of several externalities of the accidents at work. The CSRD, of course, represents the people with disability, and this is a topic that is part of the workforce, but we are represented in many more topics: adaptation to climate change, because climate change also affects people with disability, governance affect people with disability, who are also consumers, we're part of a community. So we are part of all the information and sustainability European norms. But since I was talking about decent employment, I wanted to focus on some norms, because since we don't have standardization, the European Union wanted to create like a guiding principle, a guide for countries and companies to alleviate that lack of standardization. And one of the pillars is the in-house staff. And another one is the staff in the value chain. So the workforce is represented in its entirety, because people with disabilities can be in both groups. And then we have some subtopics. For instance, employment and inclusion of people with disability. This is very important because this is not the first time the Law 11/2018 is not mentioned for the first time. It talks about people with disability in one of these subtopics. And they give them value, such as Fundación Rendirse give value to them. There is an association of inclusivity CEOs. So we said that companies they opted in for the voluntary reporting in 2022, but in 1919, some companies were already opted in for the voluntary reporting. Some company associations and some private associations said they needed some guidelines for this reporting. For instance, the Global Reporting Initiative, SASB, IFRAG, IFRS. There are many guides or guidelines. And I understand that not all of you are experts in accounting, so I want to explain you what the directive wants from us. When I tell this to my students, I ask them, what is this materiality matrix asking from them? When someone says, hey, we need to talk, we all get goosebumps, right? Well, this CSRD directive is saying, hey, we need to talk. It's like whenever a friend needs to talk and you have to listen to them over a coffee. What is going on with them? What's the impact of me in them and them they in me? It's like an exchange, what matters to you, what matters to them. This is like a beautiful way to put it. But of course, the CSRD is not having a coffee with a friend, but it's very similar. We need to reach a consensus on these important topics, because the materiality matrix is what is mattering to you, what matters to me, and where we clash or where we meet. So I wanted to conceptualize where I stand in terms of sustainability reporting and why it matters to people with disability. What are the research objectives? The ultimate objective is to come up with an index or with some indices, because when I read the European legislation, we have to produce goals, means, indicators, for instance, the percentage of people with disability. But the stakeholders may want something else, or if you want to work in decent and inclusive employment, you need to go beyond that. Fundación 11, with the Global Reporting Initiative, created a guideline on comparative reporting and disability, precisely to go beyond. The Global Reporting Initiative, the GRI 405, deals with diversity. This is like a guideline for reporting, right? So you need to report on how many people work in your company, and then classify them according to gender, age, and other criteria. What criteria? It's open. It's like Law 11/2018. If you use disability as a keyword, you will get it, but in a very generic, broad way. How many people with disabilities? So my aspiration is not just have some purely regulation indicators, but something that goes beyond, because it is one thing to talk about disability. It is a different thing to talk about corporate responsibility. It's one more step. It's also about universal accessibility, integration, but it's too generic. It's not like blaming the companies. It's not blaming. It's not putting the blame on them, because they're following the guidelines and the legislation. But that's why the purpose of my research is to come up with a list of indicators for those who want to go beyond and care about inclusion. This I'm only into the first stage of my thesis, and so I've created a corporate list, and I've chosen the IBEX 35 companies, the 35 top companies in the Spanish market, in the Spanish stock exchange, the ones with more liquidity. And it is also a way for me to see or to use the companies that are experienced or seasoned in using this type of reporting, but I'm also choosing other types of companies that are experts in disability, such as Fundación 11. So it's like a comparison. I'm comparing companies that are seasoned in this type of reporting and others that are not. I'm focusing on Fundación 11, but I've, thanks to my colleagues, I've become aware of other companies working in this same field, and I want to study them. So out of that strategy, we can link it with some legislation that seems like disaggregated, but sometimes or somehow looks kind of standardized. So there's been like some kind of paralyzation of the amount of legislation that was being passed, but it was necessary in my view. So I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, and I've read all this previous literature, and I saw that some externalities such as climate change impacted several industries. It was a material risk for many companies, a material risk and opportunity for companies. This is all about climate change, environment, that got to spotlight in the corporate reporting initiatives, but little by little the social aspect has been included too. Human rights, equity, and inclusion are still communicated in a limited manner. We also see that lack of standardization that we saw in the European Union. Indicators for equity or inequality and diversity are often vague or superficial. Double materiality is compulsory since 2022, but the level of detail varied from company to company. Some of them focused on the financial aspects, some others on other types of experts, and that affected transparency, comparability. Some studies even contrasted it with the Gini coefficient. It is true that it increased companies' values, and there is also an institutional theory from social accounting theories, and it says that, well, if this is also positive, you can use it to sell it to your stakeholders. You can sell your will for transformation. It's like marketing efforts. Greenwashing? Well, social washing. That's why in my sample I chose the IBEX 35 companies because of some time constraints and because I wanted to focus on the Spanish market, because the literature produced in other countries is focusing on their respective countries. But I know it's a constraint because I want to focus on the European Union as a whole, and I want to do a comparison. I want to draw a comparison between different European Union companies and countries. The methodology is a content analysis. I'm analyzing and praising the reports. Not just the reports, we'll see it with the first outcomes. Looking at the corporate pages, corporate websites, and for the KPIs, I'm also using other sources in the social dialogue, trade unions, the press, and the media. You will see it in the outcomes. And then, of course, I want management and reporting indicators for companies. I want to help the companies because if in my materiality, employment and inclusion of people with disabilities are important to me, and if they're also important to my stakeholders, I need some guidelines. And that's why I want to create that list of indicators. So, well, this is the sample, but something has to be borne in mind. The regulation, the 2022 regulation, is not effective as of now, hasn't come into force because it hasn't been transponded in Spain and other countries. So we still have to abide by Law 11/2018. And this can be seen in the type of information disseminated by companies or published by companies. So we have to use other types of guidelines, SASB, Global Reporting Initiative. The methodology, as I said, is the speech analysis, discourse analysis, content analysis. It has many constraints, but again, this is an information tool. This is a decision-making tool. So this tool is reflecting how we manage this, and as such, it is a first step. We expect not just the outcomes I got, but that the third sector might have more comprehensive dissemination, more coherent dissemination, with an emphasis on people with disabilities along the lines of the European legislation that will happen too with the IBEX 35 companies. In the materiality matrix, we see it at the top level. In the IBEX 35 companies, the approach will be more generic, more heterogeneous, sometimes with scarce mentions to the disabilities. Only positive aspects? No, the directive wants to focus on the negative aspects too and what is missing. Because sometimes it's not that I don't want to do the things that are missing, but that they are still in progress, that I'm still on them. If we look at the index chosen by the legislation, well, I've chosen two companies, Iberdrola and Fundación 11. So I get to the corporate report published by Iberdrola, and this is the table I get. GRI 505 said, use gender percentages and something else. So, well, they abide by the law, but I don't get the information I'd like to have. But maybe because they don't know how to publish it. But if you go to the table published by ONCE, it is much more descriptive. You have many data about their staff. If you look at people with disability, you can see types of disabilities. This is just a minor detail, but at least I can see the type of disability because it is not the same. Again, if I want to manage the occupational risk prevention, it is not the same to have different types of disabilities. And, well, you can see me with lots of questions, and, well, these are the keywords I use: people with disabilities, inclusion, all together, and then I found all these pillars: recruitment policies, certification, diversity and inclusion committees. So in the recruitment policies, it's all about fair rules for recruitment, but maybe I could benefit from a link, a site that explained exactly how the recruitment process was. Because, well, you can say, yeah, it's a non-discriminatory, equal recruitment process, but yeah, please explain it in detail. Some of them had certifications for the recruitment process, but certification doesn't mean that the recruitment process is perfect. Certification is just complying with some items included in the certification. We can also see if there is an inclusion committee. They emphasize it. It can be global, it can be local. But as some of my colleagues say, diversity and inclusion go together most of the time, but there are so many details with them. So again, these are the question marks because this looks very positive, right? Then again, smart accessibility. In the workplace adaptation, you can see smart accessibility, for instance, with artificial intelligence, for the onboarding process, for the recruitment process, for the training. They also can have external training courses. They have grants for doctorate candidates. So again, more questions. The results on active participation. Well, we can see if the access to the service for the group is okay, because we're all clients, and we can see if the deadlines are flexible. They can also work with associations, and they can measure the impact on the community. I'm not criticizing it. I'm saying that this looks all very positive, right? And probably because I'm only in a preliminary stage, I'm still looking for the negative aspects. And if I cannot find them here, I need to look for other sources, such as associations, trade unions, and the press and the media, to see if there is a correlation. So I still have some minutes. I will move into the conclusion. So I think that specialized foundations lead this. I need to look at the reports they publish, and they are not obliged to publish them. They can opt out or opt in, and that tells us a lot about what they want to do. So the good news is not that we are making mistakes, but that we have much room for improvement. But this kind of research also is a possibility for companies to learn from them. It's not sometimes that they don't want to do it, but that they don't know how to do it. We are also paving the way for more transparency and for more inclusive, equitable European Union, and also about the impact. This is something that is widespread in the forum. So since I am accountant and I'm talking about accountability, my motto is what is measured is managed, and what is not measured is not managed. But what is measured is managed, and what is managed is transformed. But I know I still have to knock on many doors. I have many constraints. And I've learned from my professors and my thesis director, but my limitations are also the opportunity for more avenues for research. I've also learned it from my colleagues. As Christina said, at the end, I'm going to come up with some indicators or indices, but sometimes I also need to sit down and talk to the people with disability who work in the foundations and these companies to see what they think or what they need in this kind of reports. Not just about this type of information, which at the end of the day is public, it's also about internal information that you can find in companies. I want to also analyze the potential disabled washing. And with this analysis, I try to research other sources. And I also want to analyze the determinants. I think on the foundation, tercer, and the guidelines I am using myself also talk about accident at work and the sudden disabilities. And I want to use it for the analysis of the determinants on the different impacts that need to be put into that factor analysis for a good research to happen. But the more I study, the more avenues for future research I find. I have a notebook full of notes, so I have a long way to go, and I'd like to finally thank my colleagues because they opened my mind for many possible future topics. Thank you, and I'd like to take any questions or suggestions. Thank you.
Yes. So thank you for your presentation, and I have to recognize.
Perdona. A ver. En el 2, ¿verdad?
It's okay?
Yeah.
Well, so I recognize a lot of your the information you gave are new for me. But I think you're right, and the global perspective is very essential. So I have a few questions. If I understand, there is a European standard for reporting on the social dimension and sustainability. So I want to know what kind of information enterprises are obliged to give. Statistics, qualitative information, etc. Is there a sort of general cadre? And is it easy to compare from one enterprise to other and to see the difference? I think it's the most important, because if the standard, the information reporting is not very precise and sophisticated, it's difficult to compare. If it is if the demands are not enough important, I think the role of European Union is to make stronger standard and exigence. That's first for me.
Sí.
So perhaps you can precise for me because it's important. The second point is the role of stock exchange and enterprises quoted to the stock exchange. I think it's very essential because, you know, the quotation of a stock is very important for an enterprise, and if a risk or some mistakes have for results to go the value of the stock down, it's a catastrophe. And I will tell you two cases in a few minutes. So, the IBEX is concern big enterprise. What kind of enterprise are obliged to make the reporting? Middle size, big enterprise, is there a limit? You know, if you have an enterprise with 30 people, you cannot. But if you are big enough, you can. That's evident. So, if I understand your conclusion, the demands are not so strong because you tell us the reporting is of enterprise is not very homogeneous, very heterogeneity, and perhaps I could be interested in what kind of heterogeneity, because if you want to promote global studies, you know some, so understand. So now, you know, the specific case of enterprise with stock quoted on the stock exchange. I think it's very important for that kind of thing, I told you. And I looked on my documentation, and I find there was, alongside with financial information, some specific report in French ESG report, Environment, Social and Governance, with some notation. So you can have a AAA, AA, A, and B. And if you have a B, it's not so good. So if your quotation is not very good, that can have an impact for you as an enterprise. And I look at some recent events for enterprise that were confronted to shocks in social field. I look at two. One big enterprise in the sector of retirements, houses for people, and people and press was informed that old people were not always very well treated. And the stock of the company went down 20 or 30% down. So with a lot of negative consequence. Another one, an enterprise active in Colombia, but a French enterprise, with that work in very bad social condition, it was exactly the same. So the social reporting is going to be very important, is already important. The problem is what is the room for your subject in this room? So you have perhaps to precise this. And also, last information, I mean, you have some special investing funds. You can invest in this fund with high grade about social responsibility. So, you know, the quotation, the interest for investors, but general public to invest is going to be more and more important, I think. And I wanted also to ask you if it is possible to imagine, but I know you think it is possible, to make some national comparison with CAC 40, DAX, BEL 20, etc., and to have a more European side. And perhaps the best way is to take the Eurostock 50, but you cannot do the job alone. But I think it could be very interesting. First, you finish and you give a strong methodology and strong paper and strong results, and then find 2 or 3 colleagues to make a pan-European paper.
Sí, sí, sí.
And, well, for the... Yes, I stop now because I think we will have the opportunity to discuss more.
¿Contesto primero?
Thank you so much for your comments. I think everything that you said can enrich my research. I came here with a notebook and a pen to take note of everything. I will start with your final remarks. Something that I could mention in my thesis is that limiting my work to IBEX 35 is not talking about Europe. I just limit myself to Spain. That's a limit. But just analyzing 35 reports is something that I want to do in 2 years, and I have that time constraint. Research line that I'm working on with some colleagues from Italy on the field of accidents at work is an analysis on a European level. So, echoing your ideas and in line with this cooperation that I have with Italian colleagues, I do agree that this research can go much farther. Because as I was saying, it is not only the analysis. There are many other things that I didn't mention. For example, disabled washing or some other aspects that you were mentioning are stock market shocks because of this type of events. So, what type of information are we talking about? Qualitative and quantitative on many aspects. I wrote this down because I was expecting this question. In addition to the materiality and the policies, this is a guide where we have a general part and a specific part. The general part asks about materiality. I don't want to be too detailed, but it talks about policies, actions, objectives, and metrics. That is what you are expected to tell about your management. The general norms specifies it generically, and once you have your matrix, that is, once you have analyzed your context, your sector, your activity, your stakeholders, and you know about the impact materiality and the financial materiality, with that information, you can report, for example, in the case of people with disability, your policy, your actions, your objectives, and your metrics. This was reduced because in the beginning it was a very broad norm. Businesses were a little bit tense about it because there were many items to report about, but the spirit of the norm is that we don't want to only hear about the positive aspects. We also want to know about what you can't achieve, what you can't make. And when it comes to social aspects, it's only about hired staff. but it also talks about fundamental rights, safety, and health and safety, sorry. But many topics depend on your materiality, and this connects to what you were saying about heterogeneity. S2 talks about the value change, S3 is about consumers, and S4 is about communities, because we have an impact with our economic activities. This is in general lines, because if you go to the European sustainability reporting norms, we could be speaking about this for 1 or 2 afternoons. It was not so much about achieving homogeneity, that is consistency, because the idea is that we all follow the same norms. That was very important, consistency, because the Spanish law says that you can use any framework that you deem suitable for these aspects. For example, in the European laws, we have the European Global Reporting Initiative. But there was not a common framework for an Italian, a French, and Italian business. Now it all depends on the materiality matrix. If you're in one sector, your matrix is going to be different than in another sector. But if we have 2 companies, same sector, same activity, the matrix would have to be very similar, and your reporting would have to be comparable in the sense that the norm is the same. Are they strong and reinforced? I do think so, but as I was saying, at the end of the day, we have many regulations, and I think we are taking a break, and I hope we can reflect during this break. You were talking about the size. I do agree. We have the size in terms of assets, business volume, and employees. I could give you a figure, but that figure is still being negotiated. It's still under negotiation what size of a business will have to present this reporting. There have been many changes. There were some time objectives, and our Spanish regulation has a benefit, and it's that it was much more strict than the 2014 norm. But it's the big ones. And this is a paradox, because there are many small and medium-sized enterprises in Spain. And this is something that is concerning for Spanish companies, because these may not be mandatory, but a guide is being drafted for them in case they want to report on these questions, because what matters is not to report, it is to manage these aspects. And of course, corporate reports are public, and there are agencies that do ratings. For example, a rating called Miembro was recently published, and one of the first business that is analyzed is the ONCE Foundation, and IBEX 35 comes under ONCE. In terms of social and environmental reporting, and this has an impact because there are many literature studies that show how that rating can have an impact on the value of the business, and the connection has been extensively shown in prior literature. Regarding bonds, there is a norm on funding too, European funding. So we have sustainable bonds, sustainable finances. I'm not an expert on this, but I know that the role of the companies in charge of financing, there we have a double paradox. It's a company, they report, but they have to worry about what is being funded. We see that plays a role because it is true that bad news about a specific management can impact the stock market, but there's also a positive impact. If there's good news about sustainability, that can have a positive impact. But companies that are on the stock market get very much affected by these ratings. Did I answer all your questions?
Well, I have to one or more remarks. Yesterday, and we were confronted to some statistics, and in some countries you have 10% affected by disabilities, another is 40. So we have really a problem of statistics. Of general, what are we speaking about? So I think one of the problems, and a problem that has to be solved, is to present a scope of categories. Because if you work on two general statistics, the value of work is nothing, is null. So what is disability? What is it? So, you know, you have to precise, because 40% is quite incredible. It's a problem of counting. It's not a problem of, so we need absolutely this, and to have comparisons, it's important. Another question for me is, well, I think the market can make pressures, and we have already some possibility in this field. But also, one of the problems also is the access to people with disabilities to management and top management. And so it's a problem of access to business school, good university, etc. For these people. You see, everything is connected. If you have people having good diplomas in management, they can enter, and even if they cannot work, you know, it's not a problem in that case. Another one is the differences between services, industry, banks and other services. I think perhaps we have some differences. It could be interesting to have a look, but have you the means to do this? And also the difference of a social model in Europe. That's my last question. If we are speaking of Scandinavian model, have you some specific site about Sweden, Denmark? And is it different in Italy or Spain or anywhere else? So I think that kind of difference could be very interesting. So it's a very huge problem. It's a global problem, but the problem of employment and enterprise, a big enterprise, is at the very center, but it's the way, the point where things can move.
Sí, empezando por el...
Starting with your first questions regarding statistics, I absolutely agree, because this is not today's central topic, but when I started my thesis, it is not about the disability statistics, but when it comes to accidents at work. In the European Union, there's no agreement on how we define accidents at work. So we have those problems of facts not being comparable. In Spain, we have a regulation on many types of accidents at work that don't coincide with other frameworks. I absolutely agree. This is something that we have to work on, because we are in a forum where we have to talk about this, and I think we need a taxonomy. We need some global definitions in the European Union. Regarding the market, this is something that I also wonder about. And in my exploratory analysis, I consider this. When we talk about boards of executive boards, we have to see whether there are people with disability in executive boards. And not only whether there are men or women, but whether there are people with disabilities, because of my colleagues were saying. Is there any way to guarantee the access of people with disability to higher management. What type of jobs do people with disabilities have in their companies? What are their contracts like? We just want to know whether there are people with disability. We want to know what job they are doing and what type of contracts they are. Regarding the social model, I don't have information about it. I take note of this because of time constraints. I focused on Spain, but yes, I do agree. This is something that we have to take into consideration. We are very different, and often this is an obstacle to consistency. However, I think that would make my work richer. About sectors, yes, in my thesis I make this division. IBEX 35 represents several sectors, so you can observe. I mean, it is 35, it's not a broad sample, but you can see a trend. And in the social environment, this is something that I'm familiar with because of my thesis. Some sectors are more balanced than others. So sectors is something that I will take into consideration in my study because I think it is very relevant in this exploratory analysis. Thank you so much for all your contributions. Hello. Good morning, and thank you very much for your excellent explanation. It is a very complex and hard topic because accounting and sustainability don't seem something that are consistency, not even the two sides of the same coin. There's something that worries me. The objectives of the 2030 agenda are goals that, as you're saying, are inspiring because as objectives, the European Union is considering them, but we don't know whether by 2030 we will have any objective or any achievements to report. When I talk to my master students about the 2030 agenda, half of the students just look away. There's much reluctancy about the achievement of these goals. So, I love it how positive you are regarding the objectives because you think that just considering those objectives makes it possible to build something. Okay. Regarding corporate social responsibility, we have been hearing about this since the first masters I did in the 90s. Corporate social responsibility. What did it translate into in the past 35 years? That's another topic. Businesses' responsibility regarding the social impact of their economic policies. What does this translate into socially? I am very worried about this because accounting sustainability reporting indicators that you are talking about are connected with legislation, European legislation, norms, regulations. And you mentioned one element that you need to address. You are in this first analysis that you're carrying out on accounting and sustainability, you are at a high level. And at this high level, you explore what has been done by those who should contribute more to the SDGs objectives. You talk about on the foundation, but what happens with, for example, trade unions? What's up with trade unions? I want to say something. If there are collectives that are aware of the obstacles that workers have in different areas, that would be trade unions. If there's something who's got the data, it's trade unions. I want to share with you the message from the trade union, from the main Spanish trade unions. This is the Christmas message to the workers from the trade union. Dear 2026, this year we don't want to ask you for toys or bright toys. In this commission, our letters are full of wishes that are rights, and it mentions 5. One is we wish to have job stability for all collectives, that includes people with disabilities. We want more investment in higher education. We want decent infrastructures. We want fair salaries and decent conditions. And the last one is a dream. That is you when you're thinking on your PowerPoint. We dream with an inclusive and sustainable university. Inclusive and sustainable that looks at the future with social responsibility. But it says we dream. It doesn't say we ask for it, it says we dream. That's the challenge. The challenge is to stop dreaming, to start managing. So, welcome to the field of struggle, because much collective fight is necessary and collective support to achieve those objectives that you wish for. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you for your intervention. I said that I'm a dreamer, but I want to be realistic too. And it is true, I studied in a master's where we were shown a video of how much of the SDGs was on track of achievement, because on many cases, we haven't made any progress. We have gone back. But I think it is good to have that idea in mind, because it makes us focus. I think trade unions are a key in this research. After taking a look at the 35 reports, I realized that I needed another source. That's why I would like to specify that in my first indicators I went to the law and I saw what is being asked, and what the law is asking for is being fulfilled. That's why I want to take a look at legal indicators and also ethical or corporate social responsibility indicators, because I think they will go beyond. I think that's what ONCE Foundation is asking for, going beyond. If you want to talk about impact, we have to go beyond percentages. That is what the European legislation asks for. So I do take into consideration a division of indicators that are not only legal. And I think most of what I have here,
Pero es verdad que, claro, era el primer paso.
most of what I have here has to do with legal obligations. I realized that I needed more sources and much broader indicators. And that is the objective that I have with this research. Yes, of course. I hope that we can stop talking about dreams and we can start talking about realities.
Bueno,
Congratulations for your presentation. You didn't have any reason to be nervous. This work has been the reason or source of conversation between professors for 2 nights. So your paper has really been a source of interest. So we have to see what the representative weight of the labor force is in Spain. It is considered to be around 20%. So we can say that this is relevant. So yes, trade unions are important, but we have to see how this comes into play in practice. We don't have to be dreamers to be optimistic. Sustainable Development Goals, from number 1 to number 17, are objectives. I don't want to be cynical, but they're nothing but objectives, and now there are trends. And on a global level, the one that is in a better track is gender equality. And within gender equality, disability is included because of intersectionality. As jurists, because I want to take this to my field, of course, as jurists, we have a twofold mission. Globally, we need to be more specific about the convention, the 2006 Convention on Disability, and we need to reinforce the alignment between this convention with the 266 Pact, the International Economic, Social and Cultural Rights Convention. This is more than a question, is my congratulations to you for using numbers, for using accounting, things that normal humans hate. At least we jurists hate numbers. But congratulations, because behind those numbers there are realities, economic realities, financial realities, and social realities. Thank you very much. Firstly, because I have a divided heart. I am an economist, but I'm also a jurist. So thanks for making reference to the convention. Trade unions are a source, but we could also use the rulings. But that starts becoming too much. I don't know if I'm going to have time. Rulings were something that I couldn't address in my doctorate thesis. You mean rulings of the Court of Justice of the European Union? Maybe something from Strasbourg, but not so much. Just by making you like accounting a little bit more, that makes me happy. That makes me happy enough.
Bueno, Rosa, lo primero darte la enhorabuena por la exposición.
Thank you and congratulations on the presentation. It was, yes, good way for us to approach the field of accounting. So you were talking about quantification. If it not were for the quantification, as María Ángeles Durán said when she talks about the contribution of women to the GDP in the caring field, it would be a mistake. So thank you for moving forward in the field of quantification. So you were also talking about trade unions. The association movement would be important for you to take into account their answers, their views, their opinions. And so this is very important. We need to know how many people with disabilities. The UNCE Foundation breaks all this data down per type of disability. And that is important because imagine a company that has 200 staff. In my university, there are many people with disabilities, but the positions they have is, for instance, in the cleaning positions. So it is important for us to know what type of job positions they have. May I answer now? Yes, thank you for the information about the associations. I don't know their views, what their views are. I know ONCE Foundation has been working on this topic that they wanted to opt in this reporting. DIRSE is also another entity that have expressed their will to join this type of movements, this reporting movement. And yes, regarding the type of positions of the staff with disability is something we need to know. Not just the type of position, not just the job types or the job positions, but what kind of prevention you offer to them. I think Brigitte talked about it. The type of job, if it's a temporary position or not, the type of contract, the type of functionality, and this is something we can find in some of the reports by ONCE and DIRSE. Thank you, Raquel. Thank you for the presentation. I always say that we have to calculate the economic impact of any political action. You have to understand the social purpose of anything you want to implement, and we have to set a criterion. But I'm wearing the hat of a jurist now. Aid, help, social policies in terms of disabilities is a very complex situation in Spain because of the regional competencies, the regional responsibilities. So maybe you should make a wake-up call, because the policies implemented by the autonomous communities sometimes are not under the disability tag. Maybe they are part of the education competencies or social competencies in general. And what about municipalities? Sometimes they also have the duty to implement that kind of topics. For instance, road accessibility or street accessibility. It is their duty, it is their responsibility. So I recommend you to state it without too many details. I know it is complex. Thank you. Thank you. I will take that suggestion into account. Thank you for the presentation, Rosa. For me to know this type of research is doing on the corporate field is important, because sometimes corporations look very hard and very strict or very harsh, and well, the CSRD is now doing something about it. I know some of them opt in for just the ESG reporting, but well, there is at least some steps are being taken. So when Rosa de Codes said that when she talks about the SDGs, to their students, it's like a collapse. That happened to me too. I was doing an internship at the Inter-American Bank in 2019, and it is when the World Bank decided to do the SDGs World Atlas with a list of progress made towards the achievement of each SDGs with the 164 goals. So if you want to know the percentage of achievement of each SDG with the economic impact in terms of macroeconomic, you have all that information mapped by country, by SDG, with data, with tables. So I showed that to my students, and I said, this is not a green discourse, this is not greenwashing, this is a public policy with certain changes. And the level of achievement for them is now around orange, close to red. We still have a long way to go to get green, because between orange and green there is light orange, deep yellow, light yellow, and then green. But at least there is some work being done, and it is being updated every year. The technical staff in the World Bank is constantly collecting data, and so they published an incredible amount of data. And they also have like cross tables. Yeah, go to the point. I need to go to the point. Yes, I got lost with the SDGs. Well, so I just want to say that it would be interesting for you to do some comparisons with universities. As Professor Martinez de Codes said, there is some tradition in universities to study SDGs. In the management report I was reading in the University of Valladolid, 800-page long, there is a whole list of statistics of the level of achievement of universities in terms of SDGs. And I think that information is readily accessible because we have to send data all the time. If you have disabilities, the type of contract you have, if you are part of the board, if you're part of a commission, so you have lots of data, and how well into your tenure you are. Yes, we have one more question over there. Luisa, and maybe some of the professors too. Rosa, thank you for showing us your passion about accounting. I personally don't like it too much, but thank you. You said it was desirable for companies to not just report on the positive aspects, but also the negative aspects and the amount of work still needed in terms of corporate social responsibility. But historically, they fear to report on the negative aspects. So what kind of encouragement is given to company to report on the negative, and what consequences they may face if doing so? So that's very easy. Disability, for those who work on this topic, is of a political nature, because none of you is working on projection and strategy on the good use or the bad use of disabilities in the hands of the political parties, green or not, because some of them use them in public policies, as Mrs. Fraser said. But then we have to look at the local levels. How are those data being used by the political parties? No one of you has talked about it. You have to be aware of that, because in Spain at a local level that is interesting. Well, basically, to reply to Pedro Pablo, we need to understand that corporate reporting is not something in the private world, just in the private world. It's both for the public and the private world. In my research group, we have opened some avenues of research for the public institutions, and I think it could be very interesting. We have to look at universities to do this kind of reporting on other types of reporting, not just the sustainability reporting. So I will take it into account. Luisa, thank you. My opinion, my personal opinion is, well, this is information. Imagine something happened in your company, something, I don't know, an environmental mistake, and you share it with me, and you say, well, I'm now taking measures to solve it. I'm talking to my stakeholders, and I'm trying to amend the mistake. I'm trying to remediate it. And well, everything is being taken care of. We have an audit system, so I better keep quiet about it. Instead, I encourage companies to say, well, I made a mistake, but I'm on it. It's more transparent. and it's the opposite of keeping quiet. It's for a good reputation. It's more faithful to the reality. But that's my personal opinion. One of my friends, a friend of mine, said, everything has some political nuances. Everything has a political color. Everything here, everything in all seminars. But maybe we can talk about it over coffee. Thank you.
So yes, I think we have to be optimistic, but the problem of disability is a very long fight, because if you take the environment, 30 years ago, environment and profitability were opposite. Now, if you want to be profitable, you have a good... and the aim is to obtain that the same result for disability. If you have good... And it's a fight, because inside enterprise, everybody is not favorable too. We are not in a business society. You have a lot of people that don't want to have people with disability near them, in their enterprise. It's not so easy. So I think trade unions can be important because they are generally on the board of directors of very huge companies. So if the trade union has a policy, it could be interesting. Last point, perhaps you can ask to Eurostat if they are working on the subject. It's easy to have a meeting with them, and with people who are working on social dimensions, are they working on this? And perhaps a dialogue could be interesting to have a better performance on statistics.
Sí. Respondo, y es que además es importante.
Yes, this is important. In my research, we do things that have proven that diversity adds value to the companies. And then, it would be a great transfer, a knowledge transfer, for that information to be shared with trade unions or for committees. Thank you, Rosa. Thank you for your contribution and for making accounting nicer to us and to show how accounting is important for disability inclusion. And we're looking forward to your results. Big applause, and now we have